Today I'm announcing a 21st century government and a ministry for the future. The changes I'm announcing are very extensive, so let me describe them to you. The Honourable Scott Morrison will be appointed Treasurer. He's held the key economic portfolio of social services, as you know, and he has introduced significant reforms to ensure our generous social welfare safety net is more efficient, easy to understand and sustainable. He'll be a member of the ERC and of the National Security Committee of Cabinet. Now, Christopher Pyne will be appointed Minister for Industry, Innovation and Science. Christopher is going to be at the centre, as is the whole government, of one of our most important agendas. If we want to remain a prosperous, first world economy with a generous social welfare safety net, we must be more competitive, we must be more productive, above all, we must be more innovative. We have to work more agilely, more innovatively. We have to be more nimble in the way we seize the enormous opportunities that are presented to us. We're not seeking to proof ourselves against the future, we're seeking to embrace it. And this is a government and a ministry that has that as its focus. Christopher's department, the Ministry for Industry, Innovation and Science, will drive the government's focus on investing in science, promoting science, technology, engineering and mathematics education, supporting startups and bringing together innovation initiatives right across government. He will continue as Leader of the Government in the House. Senator the Honourable Marise Pyne will be appointed Minister for Defence, the first woman to be Minister for Defence in our nation's history. Marise is one of our most experienced and capable senators. She has spent 2 years in the Human Services portfolio and has done an outstanding job in modernising government service delivery. She will release the Defence White Paper later this year, defining our key national security priorities. And she will, of course, join the National Security Committee of the Cabinet. There will be 2 women on the National Security of Cabinet, Julie Bishop and Marise Pyne. Senator the Honourable Michaelia Cash will join the Cabinet also as Minister for Employment, Minister for Women and Minister assisting the Prime Minister for the Public Service. She has led the government's policy development on women's issues, especially in regards to our response to the scourge of domestic violence. The Honourable Kelly O'Dwyer MP will be appointed the Minister for Small Business and the Assistant Treasurer, a position which has been elevated to Cabinet. Of course, the Assistant Treasurer is in effect the Minister for Revenue and is responsible for the tax system, which is at the very centre of our whole productivity agenda, indeed at the very centre of the small business agenda. It is vital that we have a tax system that is fair, efficient and creates the right incentives so that we can get the gains in productivity we need. She will also be appointed to the Expenditure Review of Cabinet. Senator Arthur Sinodinos will be appointed the Cabinet Secretary, which will be a post to be reintroduced to Cabinet. Now, I said a few days ago that it was critical that we restore traditional cabinet government. The gold standard of good coalition cabinet government was during the Howard government. And as you all know, Arthur was at the centre of that as John Howard's Chief of Staff for over a decade. Senator Simon Birmingham will be appointed the Minister for Education and Training. He's moved quickly and effectively to lead the transformation of the vocational education and training sector as Assistant Minister. He'll oversee the transfer of childcare responsibilities to the education portfolio, and he'll be responsible for education and development from childcare through to schools, higher education and vocational training. The Honourable Christian Porter MP will be appointed Minister for Social Services. He is a former Treasurer and Attorney-General for the state of Western Australia. He is a formidable lawyer with strong public finance experience. He's got a strong record of managing large budgets and making service delivery much more efficient. He will also be appointed to the Expenditure Review of Cabinet. Senator the Honourable Mitch Fifield will be appointed Minister for Communications and Minister for the Arts. He'll oversee the transfer of the arts portfolio to that ministry to better align the funding and administration of support and incentives for our creative industries. The Honourable Josh Frydenberg will be elevated to Cabinet as Minister for Resources, Energy and Northern Australia. Northern Australia is another key element of our agenda going forward. Josh Frydenberg is a powerful advocate. We have a great story to tell on Northern Australia. It is a region of immense opportunity. It needs a powerful advocate, and there are a few that can match Josh's dynamism and passion for change and for the development of our nation. Now, Senator Brandis, who remains, of course, the Attorney-General, has been appointed Leader of the Government in the Senate, and Senator Matthias Cormann, who remains the Minister for Finance, has been appointed Deputy Leader of the Government in the Senate. Now, this is a process of renewal. As you will have gathered, there are some very big changes in the Cabinet. There are now 5 women in the Cabinet. But renewal, of course, the introduction of new talent means that others have to leave. One of the great challenges for any leader is to ensure that there is renewal, that we are able to bring up new talent, new faces into leadership positions over time. And that often means, that invariably means, in fact, that very capable people have to move on, stand aside so that others can come through. And that's tough for everybody concerned. Now, earlier today, the Honourable Joe Hockey told me that he would not be seeking a place in the new ministry, and it was his intention to resign from the Parliament in due course. Joe has made a long and distinguished contribution to our nation's government and Parliament over many, many years, for which I thank him. I believe he has a further contribution to make in our nation's service. The Honourable Eric Abetz, the Leader of the Senate, will not be reappointed, and I thank him very much for his service, as I do the Honourable Kevin Andrews, the Defence Minister whose position will be overtaken by the appointment of Senator Maurice Pyne. Bruce Bilson, an outstanding advocate for small business, has chosen not to take up an offer that I made to him to serve outside the Cabinet. That is his call. He has been a very, very capable minister, and he wants to take some time to reflect. And I thank Bruce very, very much for his service. Now, Ian Macfarlane is one of my very, very best friends in this place, as indeed is Senator the Honourable Michael Ronaldson, who departs the Outer Ministry. Each of them were ready to continue to serve in their current positions, which they were fulfilling with great distinction and competence. But each of them understood the need to renew, and they gave me, their leader and their friend, the opportunity for them to stand aside so that I could bring new talent into the ministry. I want to thank them for the great contribution each of them has made, all of the departing ministers have made over many years. Particularly thank them for the way in which they have facilitated these very important changes. Now, just turning to changes elsewhere in the ministry. Livable, vibrant cities are absolutely critical to our prosperity. Historically, the federal government has had a limited engagement with cities, and yet that is where most Australians live. It is where the bulk of our economic growth can be found. We often overlook the fact that livable cities, efficient, productive cities, the environment of cities are economic assets. You know, making sure that Australia is a wonderful place to live in, that our cities and indeed our regional centres are wonderful places to live, is an absolutely key priority of every level of government. Because the most valuable capital in the world today is not financial capital. There's plenty of that and it's very mobile. The most valuable capital today is human capital. Men and women like ourselves who can choose to live anywhere. We have to ensure for our prosperity, for our future, for our competitiveness, that every level of government works together constructively and creatively to ensure that our cities progress, that federal funding of infrastructure in cities, for example, is tied to outcomes that will promote housing affordability. Integration is critical. We shouldn't be discriminating between one form of transit and another. There is no roads are not better than mass transit or vice versa. Each of them has their place. Infrastructure should be assessed objectively and rationally on its merits. There is no place for ideology here at all. The critical thing is to ensure that we get the best outcome in our cities. Now, of course, we have a Minister for Regional Development and the Deputy Prime Minister, Warren Truss, but cities have been overlooked, I believe, historically from the federal perspective. So within the Ministry of Environment, I'm appointing the Honourable Jamie Briggs MP to be the Minister for Cities and the Built Environment, to work with Greg Hunt, the Environment Minister, to develop a new Australian government agenda for our cities in cooperation with state, local governments and urban communities. Responsibility for childcare will move from the Department of Social Services to the Department of Education, to give the Education Minister overall carriage of childhood education and development through to higher education and vocational training. As you know, responsibility for water will move from the Environment Portfolio to the Department of Agriculture and Water Resources, which, of course, Senator Barnaby Joyce, I should say, is the Minister, and the Senator Anne Ruston from South Australia will be appointed the Assistant Minister for Agriculture and Water Resources. And I should say, just on a point of nomenclature, I've decided that parliamentary secretaries' titles should be more meaningful. They are, in fact, assistant ministers and they should be called assistant ministers. And as a former parliamentary secretary, I know that will mean that they won't have to spend much of their time explaining what a parliamentary secretary is. Titles should mean something. There will be let me also say that this is a very talented ministry, the full details of which will be available to you. I can make some other firsts. I've mentioned that Marise Pyne will be the first woman to be appointed Defence Minister. Kelly O'Dwyer is the first woman to be elevated to Cabinet within the Treasury portfolio, and Ken Wyatt MP will be the first Indigenous MP to be appointed to the Federal Executive Council. Ken will be the Assistant Minister in the Health portfolio, working with Susan Lee. So, my friends, what we have today is, as I said right at the outset, a 21st century government and a ministry for the future. Very big changes to meet very big challenges to help all of us seize very big opportunities.